I'm Sally Kirkman from sallykirkman.com, and I'm here with Christina Rodenbeck from the Oxford Astrologer, oxfordastrologer.com, and we're here with you again for another month to talk about what's happening in the astrology. And we're moving into the last sign, Pisces season. How are you doing, Christina? How's things with you?
Pretty good, I think. That it's been an interesting month though, hasn't it, that we've just come through. I'm excited because my birthday is coming up, which I always like. I'm Pisces, with many planets in Pisces, so that's exciting. But what a month we've just had. I mean, that full moon in that Leo full moon was intense because it made the square to Uranus. That was the day of the earthquake in Turkey.
Yeah.
Which was remarkable, kind of straightforward astrology, wasn't it? It's like, oh, full moon squaring Uranus, the disruptor, and bang, there's this massive earthquake.
Yeah.
So yeah, and actually I noticed with clients and myself that day, that full moon also was quite earthquakey, in one's own life. Yeah. A lot of people seem to have arguments, or surprising things happened, or it was quite interesting, and it's still rumbling on now.
Yeah, it is. And yeah, an incredible disaster. I mean, just horrific loss of life.
Yeah,
throughout, that's brought everybody in the world to kind of support it as best we can. But yeah, I mean, I kind of, the other thing, the theme for me on personal level and with friends and clients, feeling kind of cut off, disconnected in some way with that Uranus as well, or feeling displaced, which I suppose is another theme of the that earthquake as well. But feeling that Uranus theme not quite connected somehow, or it was an interesting timing for me because I traveled. I'm talking to you from Greece now, where I'm staying for a while. And I traveled on the 3rd when Jupiter was on my ascendant. So I was here.
Yeah.
Full moon weekend. And it did take a while to settle.
Yeah.
I was like, where am I?
Sally Kirkman coming to you from Athens, Greece this time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's a really point very well made. Which that there was this sense of disconnection, and a lot of, especially my kind of people with like Leo in their chart, seemed to kind of just, it's like they were floating almost. They couldn't get grounded, and buzzing, and having very extraordinary synchronicities and some psychic experiences, or just not kind of in another world almost. And that is very Uranian, isn't it? That disconnect. That disconnectedness, and the need to reconnect is actually really important, because it's in Taurus, it's in that earth sign, which is so, it's fixed earth, and when that gets disconnected, well, you get an earthquake, don't you? These shifting things, and also this theme of displacement. So there's placement, isn't there, which is actually having your feet on the ground, and then displacement, this sense of not being in that. Yeah, I was on a weekend looking at the Kabbalah, or an experiential Kabbalistic weekend, and it's to do with some shamanic work I've been doing, and I did some meditations connected to the Kabbalah, which are traditional-ish ways of you use the words of the tree of life. I did the tree of life exercise, it's called, and I almost had my head sort of exploded in a completely Uranian way. I had one of those sort of almost out of body experiences and it was quite work for me to get myself back in. I got quite worried. I mean, I was very glad that I was actually with a bunch of people who knew what they were doing. I wouldn't want that to have been me on my own,
Yeah.
Which is also quite Uranian. It's better with people, better with a group.
Well, yeah, and because it's co-rule of Aquarius, isn't it? So, we need to have that connection as well to other people, to the group. And then also with the Uranus in Taurus at the moment, to have our feet on the ground, to keep our feet on the ground, to keep, deal with what's real in a way. And I always think for me, there's, when you're looking at the tarot cards, that is the Tower, isn't it? It's such a kind of harsh depiction of things falling apart, but you need that kind of groundedness, that rootedness at the same time to deal with it when things fall apart.
Well, and that's the thing that gets cut away, isn't it? If you're cut away from the roots. Yeah. And all those people in Turkey and Syria cut away from their roots suddenly. I don't know if you saw my Facebook thing, but my neighbors are from that part of Turkey. That is their hometown, where the center was. Yeah. And, I was away on this weekend, but David came out of our house and he ran into our neighbor who was like crying, and they had no contact suddenly with their family. They couldn't phone them. They didn't know where they were. And then when they did find them, they were in the car. They'd gotten into the car and they'd spent the night in the car, but it was snowing. And really cold, and all the roads had buckled coming out of their town, so they couldn't go anywhere initially. So that's an incredible image of this sort of dislocating earthquake, of that dislocating energy that we had then. Luckily, everybody is in their family is safe, but they've all had to disperse through the rest of Turkey. They can't stay there. And their extended family, many people are missing, dead. So they've just been dislocated from the earth entirely, gone. So very strange ending to this ending month, February. And of course we're talking about something really sad, which is this earthquake. But there were it was okay endings as well. I mean, you went to Greece, didn't you? And that was actually wonderful, and it's turning out well, isn't it?
Really well. I mean, I chose it. There's in astrocartography, when you drop the map of your astrology in the local space, astrocartography, Jupiter runs through Greece and Athens in my chart. So, it's going to, and to fly on the day when Jupiter was on my ascendant, it's like, this is the right time to do this. And it has been wonderful so far. I mean, I've dived deep into life in Athens and had some lovely synchronicities taking place, and, meeting people who really, I can see Athens through their eyes. So I'm having a fantastic time. It has worked out really well. Yeah. Loving it.
And my Kabbalah thing was great too. And it's still kind of ricochet, rippling. For me. It's rippling. I'm still processing it. In other words, I don't think I'm going to become a Kabbalist, but it was very kind of an interesting new avenue opened up. It was led by someone called Ian Reese, who's just written a book on the Tree of Life.
Fascinating stuff. So here we are moving into Pisces season. I mean, one of the things I have to say that, when you think about, okay, what's coming up now, and it's, being here in a city, we've got this carnival celebrations about to take place because it's, the carnival time. And I always think it's really interesting that we go into kind of carnival season and then Lent.
Yeah.
At some point when the sun moves into Pisces, because it just sort of fits so well for me. Carnival actually means without meat, and we're going into this period where, it's about fasting, it's about sacrificing something, it's about giving something up, and it's about prayer, and it's actually about giving to others as well. So it's, it's such a Pisces kind of feel to Lent, I always think.
Yeah. And it's the ending, isn't it? And then it ends with the Passion. Which actually that's usually in Aries season, isn't it? The Passion.
Yes. Well, it's Lent's, it's 6 weeks, isn't it? So you get the Passion in Aries, you get the rebirth, renewal in Aries, don't you?
So Pisces is this ending sign, isn't it? I mean, it's the last sign of the zodiac. We're at the final end of the cycle of the year. And as you say, it's about sacrifice, giving something up, and also it's otherworldly. It's Pisces is a sign where you connect to the numinous, or which quite a lot of some Pisces are more in that realm than they are in the real world. You connect to that land of dreams and archetype.
And you've gone all the way around the circle, whereas Aries is very much about the ego, isn't it? I am, me. And you've gone all the way around the circle. And then to get to the last sign is you've gone beyond the individual in a way. You've gone, somewhere otherly. And you sort of dive into that space before being reborn, or maybe drifting off into the universe. I don't know.
And I would say that this is slightly leaping ahead on our podcast, but looking at the month ahead, this Piscean month is hugely about beginnings and endings this year, even more than usual. But do we want to talk about we've talked about Pisces, because we occasionally touch on Pisceans or people in the news who happen to have that sign, and I'm afraid Erdogan, the president of Turkey, is a Pisces.
Really?
Yeah. Which I don't really know what to say to that, but there you go. He is a Pisces.
Yeah. Also, that's sacrifice and suffering, isn't it?
Yeah, sacrifice and suffering, and also, but he's not he's not my favorite or anyone's favorite despot. But he also has used religion as a weapon, which is interesting.
I see. Yeah. That is interesting. Well, on a completely alternative note, the only one I could think of and who's just been in the news is Rihanna, because she just did the halftime at the Super Bowl.
Lovely Rihanna.
Yeah, and revealed her second pregnancy during halftime at the Super Bowl. So I did think, oh, bless, here's Pisces. It's Pisces season. Here she is, taking center stage.
Does she have Venus in Aries, I want to say, and Aries rising? Because she is quite an interesting mixture of water and fire, isn't she?
I have a feeling, I'm not complete, but I think she's one of the ones with Venus in Aries. Yeah. Which is real, it's that strong woman, isn't it? It's kind of girl power, I always think, Venus in Aries.
Yeah, I love Venus in Aries, but it gives her that fire, and that, she's someone who just is. She's got a lot of power, hasn't she? And she, I don't want to say she's a survivor, because that makes her sound victim-y, because I don't think she is at all. But she's someone who has, cut through the nonsense of the music industry and created her own thing, which I think is very Venus and Aries. But also, Pisces can have a kind of relentlessness about them, that they will carry on, they will overcome, they will carry on, they will keep on going. When people think, oh, poor little weak Pisces, and that can just be a card that Pisces play. There's a kind of, Linda Goodman put it in a very good way in her great Sun Signs book, which still has value, even though it's so 1972. But she calls, there's a whale type of Pisces as well as the minnow type of Pisces. And I would suggest that Rihanna is a whale type of Pisces. She's a big person in the world.
Yeah, that makes it. I don't think of Pisces as, there is there's a victim complex maybe, but I don't think of Pisces as poor and weak at all.
No.
I find them really mystical, magical, fantastic. And swimming in that vast ocean, the vast ocean. I like that idea of the whale. That's a lovely image, isn't it?
Yeah, I think a lot of Pisces are more whale than minnow. The problem for Pisces, and if you want us to talk more about this, we have got some individual podcasts that we've done on each sign. So there's a Pisces one which we'll put up, I think, and it's on YouTube as well. The problem for Pisces is the dissolution thing, the dissolving. And if you manage to have the boundaries and you don't dissolve, then you can be a whale. Yeah.
Which is, again, is very interesting considering what's happening this month coming up.
Shall we dive into, speaking of Pisces and etc., shall we dive into the month ahead, Sal?
Let's dive in. Should we look at the new moon first, do you think, before going on to the big news of the month ahead?
Yeah, I think we should. Well, it's all bound up, isn't it? We can't do one without the other, so to speak. Um,
Sure.
so I will get the new moon chart up for us while we're talking.
Okay. So yeah, it's again, we've got these because actually there's going to be two new moons in Aries. They're coming really to the beginning of the star sign, and they move backwards each month in degree. So the one on February the 20th, the sun moves into Pisces on the 18th, and then there's a new moon at 1 degree Pisces. So we're getting them right at the beginning of the star signs, the new moons at this time of year. So again, there's this theme of sort of, that feels like a really new beginning. When you get a new moon at 1 degree of the star sign, it's like something new opening up. But then we see that the new moon is also sitting next to Saturn in Aquarius, getting ready to leave Aquarius, the planet of endings. So there's this real interesting kind of dichotomy or contrast going on at the moment, I think, with what is ending and what's beginning. Does the beginning come first before the ending? I don't know.
In the beginning was the ending. In the ending was the beginning. I mean, and I would say that actually you have to consider that as the dark of the moon, right? So moon dark, the dark of the moon is that new moon. And then the newness comes just like the day after, really. And interestingly enough, with this, so this new moon is the dark of the moon. It comes from that, the moon, essentially, if you're thinking about the movement of the moon makes the conjunction to Saturn and then makes the conjunction to the sun. So the moon is connecting the Saturn in Aquarius in the final stages of Aquarius with the sun in the first stages of Pisces. So that's definitely about finishing off those, and this applies for everybody, sun signs. We're still in this phase of finishing off those things that are connected to Saturn's transit through Aquarius. Whatever that meant for you personally, and for us as a collective as well. It's finishing that off and maybe having some emotional closure about it, it seems to me, because of course it's the moon, so it's about your emotions. And really having the closure and then letting it flood out and go, because moon in Pisces is an emotional connection to God or the goddess or the numinous. So it's a really powerful sense of the momentum of these endings that are happening, this sort of rippling endings. Yeah. So for each sign, that's going to be slightly different. Where it falls in your chart. So Scorpio is a really interesting example, I think, for Scorpio, that new moon, the sun, Saturn is on your IC. It's to do with your home or where you've been living or your family. And then you have the moon touch that, and then it touches the sun the next day or the following day, or actually not the following day, a few hours later. So you have those two winding together. So what's the beginning? What's the ending?
And also just to say that the Sun-Saturn conjunction, falls on, it's the 16th of February. So there's also a sense that it could be something very real that comes to an end.
I think it's going to be very real stuff for a lot of people. I actually think, this, if you think about what's process have you been through over the last couple of years? And for a lot of people, this is a COVID process or something to do with that. And this is the end of those restrictions, I think. And we may have, that's the end of that time. And I think actually for some people, there's been a sort of tightness about the Saturn in Aquarius that's about to get released. Yeah. And part of that is an emotional release. And maybe for some people, it'll be about grieving, I think, being able to actually grieve properly now, a couple of years on. Yeah. But also there's a feeling, it may be about feeling more joyful.
Yeah, it could be. But I kind of feel like, this letting the tears flow, letting the emotion out is going to be it's going to be really cathartic. And it's good to, if you're someone who can't cry, then I don't know, watch something sad and allow yourself to express and feel. It feels like that's a powerful thing to be doing, to be using this new moon to kind of express that emotion, to release what's been pent up, held back.
Yeah, and it may have been stuff that's been pent up for years, for several years. Not so. This is a really special new moon, letting your tears fall on the earth, water the earth.
I mean, for, straight away for Leo, this could be about the end of a relationship with Saturn in Aquarius, your relationship sector, something, either coming to an end now or something, a sense of loss about a relationship that's come to an end. I mean, very clear kind of for Leo with that combination.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, I mean, we're talking about the fixed signs because what's interesting is that this new moon it's an immutable sign, but the moon travels from this fixed sign into the mutable. So it's going from this sort of very from a rigid place to a flowing place.
Yeah.
And it's also so. In astrology, the fixed signs are like mid-season, aren't they? So we're coming out of Aquarius season, which is sort of midwinter here in the north. And we're going into the mutable sign of Pisces, which brings us from winter into spring.
Yeah.
So the actual sort of beginning of spring is Aries, that equinox. At the 21, at the beginning of Aries, but Pisces is the flow away from winter. So it's like the ice melts with Pisces, and the waters begin to flow, and that's really powerfully stated again with this lunation, and so that happens on the 20th of February. So that's this end of February, and it will flow right into March, won't it? And obviously for Pisces, this is a big release, I think. But it's going to be interesting to see when Saturn moves into Pisces. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah, I know. I think it's going to be fascinating for Pisces.
Yeah.
It's going to be very personal. It feels like it's going to be very personal. And also, I'm just thinking as well, what maybe need to be dammed up as well, or, because Pisces is an emotional water sign. So with having Saturn there in Aquarius, maybe it's something that needs to be held in place, or, something else that kind of grounds you in a way. Could be quite an inner experience. Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say because we've talked about this process like the last 2 years, what's coming to an end with Saturn moving on, but also it's what structures have you put in place that you want to keep?
Yeah.
That are actually functioning well, and you don't want them to be washed away, right? I think that's quite important to think about too. It's interesting, back to the fixed signs, that for Taurus, this is right on the midheaven.
Yep.
What's going on? It's to do with your status, your career, the direction you're going in life, your marriage, if you have a very public marriage, your public relationships, it may be time to end a career for Taurus or go in a completely different direction. But it may also be for Taurus that they've done, they've really harvested something, they've established themselves in some way, and now that they've done that, they can start to move on somewhat from that more established place.
Yeah. And maybe also it's, not feeling that they have to do it all on their own.
Yeah.
That there's, finding emotional support, getting connection around you, moving, you move from the peak of the chart, don't you, then into sort of that group social sector. So maybe it's recognizing that something's been established and now it's to take it out into the world, or to get more emotional support and connection on board. Also, I wonder, like for Gemini and Sagittarius, I mean, this could be, the end of a period of study, quite hard study, something that's, but you've been learning and head down. And that's coming to completion now, or, there's going to be a new phase. You're moving into a new phase with it, particularly probably for Gemini, maybe taking that out into the world, taking it out to actually use what's been learned to put that knowledge to good use out in the world.
Yeah, it's like you get your exam results, isn't it, for Gemini? Which may, obviously a lot of people won't be getting those until this summer. But this is the point where you are completing, you're realizing that you've actually completed the thing, and now maybe you're going to just go revise for the next 3 months. You know what I mean? You can see that happening for Gemini, and actually it's going to be the harvest. Put the work in and you're going to do really well. Yes, this is talking about the sort of mutable signs, isn't it? And for Virgo also, it's like there's some work that you may be completing. And then you move on and you're able to be, it's kind of more fun with this new moon because it's focused on relationships, right?
Yeah, I mean, that looks like it could easily be a new relationship, whatever that means, whether it's romantic or, I often think when you've got a new moon in the opposite star sign, it's someone new coming into your life. So it can be a teacher, it can be a coach, it can be someone who inspires you as well. It doesn't have to be about romance and love, but it's definitely for Virgo looking out for that new person coming in.
And on that same day, Venus is actually moving out of Pisces, which I think is also interesting.
And so, isn't it? I mean, it's right. Look, 29 Pisces, 57. It's just kind of hanging on in there in Pisces, ready to leap into Aries. It's really on the verge of leaving one sign and entering another.
And it's also at that point, it makes this sextile to Pluto, which is also interesting. So that feels like, again, a bit of a, it's a farewell. And now I'm going to move, and Venus, which obviously rules both Libra and Taurus, is now, starting off on her new year in a way. She's getting into Aries and setting off on a new adventure.
Yeah. And what an adventure, because she's going along with Jupiter for the ride.
Absolutely. What day do they make the conjunction? What day is that Venus-Jupiter conjunction?
It's March the 2nd. There's a Venus-Jupiter conjunction in Aries. So the two best planets coming together is always, it's got luck and good fortune kind of pouring out of it. So great news for Aries. That really is a day to embrace kind of pleasure, passion, adventure. It's kind of take a leap of faith stuff in Aries, definitely. So I mean, it's lovely.
And also, so Venus is like shaking the water off her feet, isn't she? And she's jumping into that fire sign. I think it's great for Sagittarius as well.
Yeah.
Conjunction is fantastically kind of risk-taking, which of course Sagittarians love to hear. Take the risk, Sag. Do it.
Just do it.
Yeah, do it. It really is. And for the other fight, for Leo, I mean, it's more about expanding again, isn't it? It's about the mind expansion.
Or travel.
Well. Yeah. It's like dust off your boots, isn't it, Leo, and get your backpack out and go.
Yeah, or go and visit that sort of, that lover on the other side of the world as well, with Venus involved. It could be traveling a long way for love with a Venus-Jupiter conjunction for Leo, definitely. So I mean, great for all the fire signs, actually.
And really, actually very good for Pisces, because if it happens around your birthday, just as a general astrological point as well, if this kind of thing happens around your birthday, it does influence the rest of the year. It's your solar return is going to have, for a lot of Pisces, there will be a Venus-Jupiter will be in your sign for that solar return, which influences the year and makes it an expansive year, depending on where it falls in your chart, of course. It could be good for money, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it falls in Pisces money sector. That's, that could be really good. Good day for investment, good day for investment, and a good day for attracting money in as well. There's attracting money to you, or attracting abundance in with that Venus Jupiter. No, it's always, I mean, it's a lovely one when the best two planets come together.
What about Librans for that?
That's lovely. That's great for love, isn't it? I mean, that's just really passionate, new beginnings, kind of, saying yes, saying I do, even, it can be that powerful.
And I would also say just that Jupiter Venus conjunction, it's only going to happen once this year, right? So that's bam. And for Cancerians also super important, right? Because it's right on your midheaven.
Yeah.
It's going to, again, it's a lucky conjunction of stuff. So, this is the new job. If you're going to send your stuff out, or if you're doing a broadcast, or if you're, put yourself in for a prize or expand your business, there's something very expansive for this, for Cancerians. And it's really lucky. I mean, the Cancers, you have got Jupiter on your midheaven, going across that midheaven until mid-May. Which is great anyway. Especially like for marriage. If you were going to get married on that day. But especially with this Venus conjunction. And when we say the 2nd of March, give that quite a wide margin on either side, so they'll be in some kind of conjunction.
Yeah, it's most powerful, isn't it, on the 2nd though? And also I like it. I mean, for Capricorn, it's down at the base of Capricorn's chart. So that's about expanding home, expanding family, where you live. It might be the day you find your dream home, or, you suddenly decide to move abroad. Or someone from abroad comes to visit, but it's in those areas where it's expansive. So for all the star signs, look where it falls and where there's this kind of good fortune, luck, and a time you say yes when Jupiter is active. It's a time to say yes.
There is a caveat to this.
Oh, is there? Okay.
There's always a caveat, isn't there? Which is, of course, there's a dark side to every planet and a light side. But I just want to point out that the conjunction of Jupiter and Chiron, which is involved with this, I'm just trying to see when it actually happens. It's the 12th of March. But Venus is weaving together Jupiter and Chiron. She'll make the conjunction with Jupiter and then go on to see Chiron. And Chiron can be great, okay? It's mentors and all of that kind of thing, but it can also be the wound, and Jupiter can be expanding it. So it may be something happens around that for Aries in particular, or for if you've got stuff in Aries around there. But Venus may be kind of healing that through love, I guess. So that's interesting to keep in mind, that there's always this sort of, Sally, you and I like to emphasize the positive, right?
We do.
In general. Accentuate the positive, but there's always a dark side to every planet, and the dark side of Jupiter is like exaggeration, right? Too much something.
Yeah, and so there's, I suppose, the advice to Aries would be, don't go bungee jumping on that day.
Absolutely.
It's kind of because Aries also rules the head, so don't take a big physical, risk. Really, it's when we're talking about leap of faith, it's more about your kind of confidence, or putting yourself forward. But it's not a good time to be doing like a big physical risk, I would say. With that, good pickup. So should we have a look? Should we move on to the full moon, do you think? Because well,
the full moon it's not just the full moon, is it? It's the other huge thing this month.
Yeah.
Which is, of course, Saturn's move into Pisces.
Yeah.
So I'd quite like to just sort of talk generally about Saturn's move into Pisces before we talk about the full moon itself. I mean, what's your feeling about that? And the parameters are that Saturn will move into Pisces on the 7th of March, and it'll stay there for 2 years. When does it leave? Do we have that date?
It's going to be 2025. It tends to spend 2 years. I don't know the exact date off the top of my head, but it spends about 2 years in each star sign. So, it's straight away, it's interesting because the last 4 years, since 2018, I think it is the end of 2018, Saturn's been in its 2 signs of rulership, Capricorn and Aquarius, where it's comfortable because it can, Saturn's about rules and regulations. It's about order and systems, and it's in its right place. But move Saturn into Pisces, and my goodness, you've got these opposite energies taking place, haven't you?
Oh yeah, I mean, Saturn in Pisces is a very strange position, actually, because it's going from a place of boundaries, Aquarius. Boundaries, it's the fixed air sign, so Aquarius can be incredibly, actually quite rigid, and Saturn in Aquarius has made that even more rigid. So we've had all of these rules, and I'm interested also that we have, with Saturn in Aquarius, still, we've had all of these UFOs and things being shot down over the United States. What's that about? That's because it's an air sign, right? Aquarius is an air sign. So we've at the end game of Saturn and Aquarius, suddenly these strange stuff happening over airspace. Where was I going with that? But then we go from this rigid place of like, you're not going in my airspace, right? This is my airspace of Saturn and Aquarius. Then suddenly Saturn goes into Pisces, where there's no boundaries at all. This is the sign of no boundaries, nothing.
So in a way, it's kind of like how are we going to see this play out? Because it's, there's the theme of making the unreal, Pisces, real, Saturn. Or will Pisces, this sort of deluge of water, wash down the walls of Saturn? Or will Saturn bring rules and boundaries and rigidity to Pisces themes?
Yeah, exactly.
It's kind of which way is it going to go? It's almost like, because Saturn isn't, it's not in a sign it's comfortable in, what's going to win? Will the walls and boundaries stay firm, or will the water flood?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to sort of look back, 28 years, I guess it would be, last time Saturn was in Pisces. So individually, that's a really worthwhile to do that.
Yeah.
And the speaking as a person, I am born with Saturn in Pisces.
Yeah.
Among everything else in my chart. And one of the things that I find useful for myself is not to think about myself having these rigid boundaries, but to have a strong core to keep that, because I think that the image for me, in a way, that one of the images that really works is a sea turtle swimming in an ocean. So the sea turtle itself is a very, very old thing, because Saturn is also about age, isn't it? Yeah. It's about age and wisdom, about being very, very old. A sea turtle lives for a very, very long time, and it has this very rigid shell, like a Saturnian shell, but it's its own thing within this ocean. It floats and swims in this vast ocean, and it's at one with the ocean. So it's both, wow, now I'm going really metaphysical, but it's both also on one level very large. So it is the ocean. You're part of the ocean. Also at your core, you're very strong. So it's a matter, and Saturn is, I think one of the reasons I'm going quite metaphysical is because Saturn in Pisces is also about the priesthood. It's also about the thinking metaphysically, I think, and having some structure to your metaphysical meditations, so a lot of people may find some way that works for them, some system that works for them, that gets you closer to God or closer to opening up.
Yeah. Which I think, you talked about that very beautifully, but I think we can all already sort of see this coming. I think there's, like psychedelic drugs, suddenly there's, they're really they're foreground. They're being seen as really useful for dealing with trauma. Also, things like CBD oil. I think there will be a lot of these different ways of healing and accessing different aspects of the metaphysical are going to be more regulated with Saturn coming into Pisces as well.
That's also been, and this is the other thing that's so fascinating about this tour of Saturn through Pisces. So all of that psychedelic stuff has been growing, and how people have been getting to God. I need to think of a better way of putting that, because I've used that term God a lot, but getting to the numinous, getting to the other world, how they've been reaching there.
It's about finding soul and spirit, isn't it?
How they've been becoming part of the world soul, reaching that has really expanded with Neptune and Pisces. This is what Neptune and Pisces is really one of the things for a lot of people. There has been a huge resurgence of spirituality. And that's been very collective experience for many, many, many people around the globe, of this kind of spirituality, which is not the Sagittarian kind,
Mm.
But it's a Piscean kind, which is borderless. And now Saturn comes into that to see Neptune out of Pisces. So this is the end game for Neptune and Pisces as well when Saturn comes in. And these two are going to be working together as we leave, for the next 2 years, really.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. Maybe there will be more regulation of the stuff that people have been doing. That may be right. Or there may be kind of more evidence about it. There may be sort of more real evidence, or it may become part of the established way of things.
Yeah.
They're all going to be dropping acid in the local church.
I hope so.
But it's really interesting whether I'm not sure how I feel about it when the establishment comes to start organizing these things of Pisces. It can not always a kind of it's not always a sort of positive thing, is it?
Well, no, because then it can sometimes end up turning into more of a cult, can't it? That's the other thing. And you have to watch for that always. This because Pisces does it can delude as well, can't it? There's a delusion there, not seeing things for what's true. So, with Saturn moving into Pisces, there is going to be this is this reality? Is this not, and having to sort of navigate your way through that as well, I think.
Yeah. And there will be gurus trying to control the situation, trying to take control of,
take advantage of.
Yeah. And trying to get put their rules on this.
The other thing that I'd like to see come out of Saturn's move into Pisces is cleaning up the blooming seas and rivers. Do you know what I mean? That's gone very toxic. So whether Saturn will bring new laws about what gets pumped into the seas, whether there's going to be new I think that how is the sea going to play a key role with Saturn there? What's going to be excavated from the sea, or how are we going to use the sea? I mean, it's vast, isn't it? The sea, the water in this world. So Saturn's move into Pisces, how's that going to be ordered somehow or manifested? What are we going to be seeing from the sea?
Yeah, it's really interesting how in the past 10 years we've had these sort of mammoth cruise ships have become these great big structures, these feats of engineering, this sort of speaking of whales, these giant things have been a kind of manifestation, a sort of physical manifestation, a very obvious manifestation of our own frankly polluting. They're incredibly polluting things. I know a lot of people really enjoy them, but and to me they're not a sort of Pisces thing at all. They're quite an Aquarian thing, actually, because they're this big feats of engineering and big groups of people who are often, it's often like a cruise that's revolved around a joint interest, whether it's like a rockabilly cruise or whatever, or a horror cruise, a Lovecraft, an H.P. Lovecraft cruise. God, that would be freaky, wouldn't it? Cthulhu coming out of the waves. Yes, so that's interesting that those have come under a lot of criticism and been confined during this while Saturn's been in Aquarius. What's going to happen next? Are we going to clean up the seas, or is it going to be,
yeah, or there's going to be, you can't go here anymore. Stop. Saturn in Pisces.
Yeah,
there's with Venice and places like that, there's already huge criticism against these massive cruise liners coming into these old places as well.
Yeah.
Saturn in Pisces, it is about creating these right rules, isn't it? Putting rules in place that benefit the sea and benefit the sea and earth, land and water. Just Uranus in Taurus and Saturn in Pisces. Needs to be more rules and regulations around it. So should we have fun?
Uranus and Taurus and Saturn and Pisces are in very good, nice aspect to each other, just to point that out. They work together.
Yeah.
This is a lovely sextile aspect. So there's no reason that there shouldn't be some better rules.
Well, and maybe that will all kind of start to come in the second year when Saturn's in Pisces, because then Jupiter is also in Taurus alongside Uranus and then connecting. That might be when these things really start to come into being or really open up, when you've got Jupiter there as well. Land and water, Taurus and Pisces.
Shall I put the full moon up then?
Yes, because it's the same time Saturn moves into Pisces. So, how fantastic to have a full moon on that day, really shining a light on this major epic change, actually. I mean, there's March is the big month of 2023, and Saturn's move into Pisces is part of this. It's the first major shift. So.
Yeah. The second major shift, just so you know, is Pluto moving into Aquarius, but that doesn't happen till the second part of the month. So we'll be talking about that in the next podcast.
Yeah.
But this one, the major move is this shift of Saturn into Pisces. And it feels so major also, not just because it's the end, because Pisces is the end sign, so it means that Saturn has done a whole tour of the entire zodiac over the last 28 years. And now it's in this last bit before starting again when it goes into Aries in a few years' time. So again, this is all about the sense of like finishing some stuff off, coming to the end of a very long cycle within these smaller cycles.
And it's it's so interesting. The full moon, takes place on March the 7th, and Saturn's at 29 Aquarius 59. And literally 1 hour later, Saturn will have moved into Pisces. So you get this full moon with the sun in Pisces, the moon in Virgo, and Saturn just on the verge of changing star sign. It does feel incredibly pivotal. It would be interesting to see, there's what's in the news on or around this full moon in March, because that might give us some pointers as well as to what is going to be important, first of all, as Saturn moves into Pisces. Also the media, it's about, Pisces is the star sign of the media as well. So what's that going to mean for the media? And, there's already, we have this kind of what's true, what's not in the media, and what's going to happen with Saturn's move into Pisces as well.
More regulation, possibly.
Yeah.
Whether the regulation will lead to more truth is another question. But certainly I think that there may be some more regulation and more restrictions. So you have to pay for certain things online, but there may be more things that you have to pay for.
Yeah.
With your media consumption. Yeah. Or you may have less access somehow. Because at the moment we just have this stream of Neptune and Pisces stuff coming at us with very little kind of, there's hardly any filter.
Yeah.
But what about this full moon then? I mean, obviously it's important for Virgo and Pisces. It's important because, for Virgo, it's your full moon of the year. So this is the earth and the water, isn't it? It's the connection, the earthy Virgo moon, the watery Pisces sun, look at each other across the night sky.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for both those star signs, I mean, it's about how you see yourself within relationships. It's about your relationship with the other. And I always think with full moons, because the light of the moon is so bright, it's an ideal time to trust your intuition, tap into, find that balance of head and heart as well, and make key decisions on this full moon. I think it's a really good full moon for getting decisive. Also, what's interesting, I mean, the kind of main aspect is a square to Mars in Gemini. So it's a little bit wide. It's at 21 Mars, but, there is that square to Mars.
Yeah, I would count that, because then, of course, the moon goes on and will definitely square Mars in a few hours' time, so it's pulling that Mars in. And also, I mean, it's interesting to bring up this Mars, right? The Mars in Gemini, because, of course, it's been in Gemini forever, since the end of last August. and then it went retrograde, and now it's beginning to crawl. It's coming out of the shadow now. I
Yeah,
think
it's still not. It isn't out of the shadow by this full moon.
no, shadow is 25 degrees, I think, and at the full moon it's 21.
Yeah.
Or it's around that, isn't it? But things are moving forward now. All the planets are in direct motion. And this full moon seems to me may trigger something that is connected with that long transit of Mars through Gemini. So for Geminis, obviously there's something in here maybe about the family, or about that your home, or something that you're going to need to take action on, or about being decisive. I feel this is I agree with you. I think it could be quite decisive for certain signs, this full moon, or may shine a light on a decision that you've been unable to make. You've been balancing some options, you've been weighing up some things that may seem in conflict. But this full moon may actually kind of help you to focus on, especially for Gemini, actually, on where you're going next, because the sun is lighting up the midheaven, it's lighting up the future for you.
Yeah. And it also, the other thing that makes me think of is that, this could be the time to get angry. If you're fed up with a situation that's not moving anywhere, this could be the time to speak up with that Mars in Gemini. And say enough is enough. You need to crack on and do something. So there could be a sort of trigger of anger, or a catalyst. Something happens at this full moon that kind of opens those floodgates in a way.
Or a row that has been ongoing.
Yeah.
Because there's something that's been, the red planet has been in Gemini for a really long time. And there have been words have been flying for some people around, and this brings it to some kind of emotional climax, I think. As you say, we're still in the shadow. We're still in this sort of slightly mucky place with that Mars in Gemini.
Yeah. And just to add that, this happens on March the 7th, but there's this little period in the month, 15th to 17th of March, when, that's actually when Mars is out of its shadow phase. It gets to 25. But at the same time, that's when it squares the sun around that period. The sun is conjunct Mercury, Neptune's pulled in, there's a Mars square Neptune. It's kind of like what's building during this full moon perfects, those aspects perfect with the sun and Mercury.
It actually looks pretty. It could be quite stressful, I think, for certain people. Because it's a square aspect, right?
Yeah.
So, something may be coming to a head, especially, I think, for Geminis, stuff that's been brewing all this time bursts forth. Or for Sagittarians as well, something bursts out that has been brewing, and that has been, or festering would be another way of putting it. And the words come spilling out. Yeah. It's like you've been building up to some kind of warfare, and now the gun, now you're shooting, the shooting begins. So I would be, that's the sort of negative side of that. The positive side is that you have been working on some incredible writing project, and now's the time to release it. Yeah. So it depends how this energy has been working for you. Hopefully it's just words, because it's Gemini.
Yeah. And it's very creative as well. It kind of makes me think of something going viral, or being shared a lot during this period. And Pisces is, there's a creative aspect to Pisces. It's the realm of the imagination as well. So it's, it's really channeling communication and words in a way that could be quite beautiful and touch people, and, has an emotional appeal as well. So, there may be some great writing or art or music that's born under this as well, that comes to light, a new voice.
Yeah, or is just working away in the shadows and will come to light later, But it feels like I like that. I actually quite like this full moon, even though there's like a tension to it. because it feels like something is like coming out, that has been held back or held in for a long time. And it's to do with that Mars. And also thinking, the Mars will leave Gemini, but not till the second part of the month. And we'll discuss that in the next podcast. But has been a very, very important transit, this Mars through Gemini, and the Mars retrograde has been, I've really noticed that Mars retrograde a lot.
Yeah, no, it was really powerful.
Yeah,
I can feel also as well with this, there's this full moon is saying, okay, Saturn, you're coming into Pisces, but not yet.
Yeah.
It's, with this Mercury, the communication, and the sun shining bright on Neptune, on Pisces, and then Neptune there as well. It's like they're sort of running away with all that flow and boundlessness of Pisces, whether it's creative or spiritual, and they're not letting Saturn catch up just yet. It's kind of not yet. Let us do our thing. Let us flow out into the world.
And the sun is actually just making a pretty nice sextile to Uranus again, speaking of freedom, that burst of freedom.
Yeah.
Just before Saturn comes in.
So really interesting. It's an interesting month, isn't it? Because you can sense these themes of endings and beginnings. What is coming to an end? What you're ready to sort of release, let go of. And
it's all shifting. The one thing I would say is, stay light on your feet. Yeah. Everything's changing. It's not a time of certainties, but it is a time to move forward.
Yeah.
Even if you're uncertain, and you can't be, no one can be absolutely certain, even astrologers, about the future. And if they tell you that they know exactly what's going to happen, then they're lying. But we can give you, this is a weather report, it's not a precise forecast, is it? Yeah. It's not a precise prediction in a way. It's a weather report of what the weather is like. And the weather is move forward with as fast as you can, because everything is going to be moving forward fast in this, because all the planets are direct. Most are moving quite quickly, except for Mars, which is still going slowly. But be ready to change and adapt as you go along.
Yeah.
Because other people's stuff is also moving forward quickly, and there are events are changing. The events are happening rapidly.
Yeah. I think it's a really good time to experiment and explore, see what works, what doesn't. Just keep trying different routes, which open up in front of you, which are kind of, which are where you come to a dead end. It's a real time to I like that, be light on your feet, definitely.
Yeah, and I like the word experiment, because actually what an experiment, being experimental, means that you may actually try something that may be terrible. But it's fine, because things are moving forward so quickly, you can just drop that and move right on to the next thing, so feel like, be free.
Yeah.
Cool.
So I think kind of time-wise, we're probably nearly there, Christina.
Yeah, I think we need to stop. See, next month, next month's podcast has also got a lot going on. So, meanwhile, have a great time, guys. See you then.
Yeah, look forward to it. Enjoy Pisces month. We'll see you on the equinox.